Welcome to this channel. The month of October that just passed. Australia's housing market continues to rise. But the real estate market has formed two camps. The trend has begun to deviate from the broader market. The trend has shown a weakening trend. Uncertainty rises. To make matters worse, the housing crisis caused by the surge of immigrant students. Sydney will change strategy. Large-scale development of urban areas. Double the number of high-density apartments originally planned. It was cancelled at the same time. Several urban fringe development zones. Thousands of residential units. Melbourne will follow. The future of Sydney and Melbourne housing markets. What will it look like? Solved people's livelihood problems. More people can afford houses. It was a good thing. But a new trend. It also created a family of homeowners. Polarization between rich and poor. Some people are getting richer because they own a house. Others can only stop moving forward. Australian housing market performance in October. Up again 0.9%. This is after bottoming out in March this year. Rising for 8th consecutive month. Rising for 9th consecutive month this year. Rose 0.8% in October. But the rate of increase is higher than that in September. Down 0.2%. Sydney house prices are still rising. It's just that the rate of increase has slowed down a little. Melbourne rose 0.5%. But combined with the trend in August, September and October, didn't rise more than 0.5% each month. So there is a tendency to enter a flat market. How fast are Brisbane house prices rising? Increase again. House prices rose 1.4% in October. Perth accelerated gains 1.6%. Adelaide rose 1.3%. However, the month-on-month growth rate decreased by 0.4%. The changes are more obvious. Canberra and Darwin. They are very stable during the flat period. What about the flat period in Canberra? It's been going on for 7 months. Judging from the quarter-on-quarter trend chart. House price growth in Sydney and Melbourne declining. There is a possibility of remission. Brisbane. Perth and Adelaide housing markets remain flat. Or in the process of accelerating the rise. Supply and demand can reflect the market most directly. Comparison of the power of buying and selling a house. To see the trend of short-term market price fluctuations. New home listings month-on-month. Exceeding the same period in 2022. But below the 5-year average. Although the number of listings is still increasing. But the trend has slowed. There are more listings because those companies are too highly leveraged. People with loan interest rates that are too high. Caused by listing sell-off. At the same time, the existing housing stock month-on-month. Still lower than the same period in 2022 and the 5-year average. Growth has slowed. What about data analysis? Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide. Least new listings. This is also the most significant driver of price support. Canberra this spring. Listed properties soared 21%. Everyone is selling their houses. So house prices can't go up. A flat period lasting 7 months. Sydney listings up 9.3%. Melbourne listings up 10.7%. Therefore, the momentum of the housing market is gradually decreasing. We also observed newly listed properties, mostly high-density apartments. This independent villa is suitable for family living. The number of listings has not increased significantly. Our thoughts on the Australian housing market in October. Make a summary. First, the national housing price market will be in mid-October, exceeding peaks during the epidemic. Scan the last wave of real estate market. All losses fell. Even if you bought at the peak of the epidemic. Most likely starting next month. It can also be profitable. At the same time, the growth rate of national market housing prices, there is a tendency to slow down. What about some cities? Already entered the flat period. That's mainly due to the increase in listings for sale. Caused by rising house prices. Affordability worsens. And mortgage interest rates remain high. In October, except for Darwin. Prices rose in other housing markets. Brisbane, Perth, AD leads Australia's gains. Melbourne suburbs, currently experiencing worst house price growth. The opinion of this channel. Yes, house prices and rents will continue to rise. The wealth of those who don't own a house continues to shrink. People who own houses as house prices rise. The amount of assets is getting higher and higher. Demand-side forces in the short term. There won't be any fundamental change. Until the entry barrier is lowered. For example, continued population growth. Bringing continued increase in demand for housing. Or financial subsidies and tax reductions. Additional issuance of monetary policy. Currency lowers interest. It also reduces the difficulty of credit. An increased loan capacity. What about these factors? If it doesn't appear, buying side needs. It is difficult to achieve substantial improvement. Although the wealth of people who own houses has increased. The wealth of those who do not own a house has shrunk. Current policy and economic environment. Another one started to be born. Brand new future trends. Let the wealth of homeowners. There will also be polarization. In the next few years. Probably decided. Can you make money through property investment? What about Australia now? More people, fewer houses. This fact. I don't think anyone living in Australia would object to it, even without looking at the data. This is also the case intuitively. House prices rising. People can't afford houses. Loan interest rates rise. Leading to a decline in borrowing capacity. Repayment pressure rises. Not only can people not afford to buy a house. Investors who already own property. There are also some who can't stand it. People who need to reduce leverage and sell their homes on the market. Can't afford a house. I have no choice but to rent it. Since more than a year, Australia opens its doors. Let new immigrants and international students flow into Australia. In the 12 months ending in September this year, the number of people increased by 500,000. The demand for housing has increased. But the supply of housing cannot keep up. According to data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, Australia second quarter, only 25,000 new housing starts were built. The completion volume is 27,000 units. And judging from the trend, construction starts recently. It has been declining for several quarters. The past 4 quarters. The total construction volume is only 100,000 units. How can we accommodate these 500,000 people? This does not include local Australians. When children grow up and need their own house. This is how Australia's rental crisis arises. According to statistics, in the past 39 months, Australia's average rent continues to rise. It also confirms the supply of Australian real estate. Tense reality. In this general environment, local Australians can no longer afford to rent a house. We often see Australian local news reports. Can't afford to rent a house. Can't get a house. Had to move further to the suburbs. Even an example of living in an RV. People's livelihood has become a big problem. So what about the Australian government? Only then can all Australians have houses to live in. Solutions for Sydney, NSW. Let's not talk about other states and territories. Let's talk about Sydney, New South Wales. Because the situation in Sydney is very typical. NSW state government assures federal government will be in the next 5 years supply 375,000 new homes to the market, equivalent to annual new home completions. Need to reach 75,000 units or per 1,000 people. 8.75 units need to be built every year. But what's the problem? It started in 1985. In the nearly 40 years until now, only the completion volume in 2019 exceed this number. So the NSW government wants to reach its target. The haiku that I boasted about came true. We can only use some unconventional means. In other words, it's almost crazy. In this matter, the NSW government solution is first, stop urban expansion. Second, at metro stations near urban areas, carry out large-scale apartment development. Third, state governments mandate building approvals and prefabricated building solutions. What about Sydney's northwest and southwest development areas? 1. Stop urban expansion has been going on for over 10 years. Among so many years, the scope of Greater Sydney continues to expand. And the infrastructure link, the required fee is what the government is least willing to bear now is building roads costs money. It costs money to repair train lines. School, shopping mall, hospital, industrial park. Recreation facilities, green field. Everything is a costly transaction. The current fiscal deficit of the old and new governments. This is no longer allowed. We cancelled recently and delayed Sydney infrastructure projects. The trend can be seen above. If we expand the urban fringe, most houses can only build on low-density land. Usage efficiency and completion quantity simply cannot keep up. Compared with the current goal of protecting people's livelihood, directly contradict. Just last week, NSW government decision cancel the original trip to Northwest. Plans for several development zones, including Marston Park North, Riverstone Town Centre, and part of West Schofield. A total of 12,700 homes were planned to be built. More than 10,000 of them were directly cut off. Only 2,300 units are left to continue construction. What is the official reason? It's because the area where the cancelled housing plan is located. There is a risk of flooding. Is it because of the flood hazard? I do not know. What I know is the government will save a lot of infrastructure costs. What about this trend? Will continue in the future. Sydney's urban geographical expansion. It may have been declared over. Since cities no longer expand. Ways to provide more listings. All that's left is to build high-density housing. That is, high-rise apartments. 2. Large-scale development of apartments at metro stations near urban areas. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, the NSW government is preparing close to 7 metro stations in the city. Large tracts of land nearby. Planned as priority zones, priority development areas. What is it used for? You guessed right. Build high-density apartments. It turns out that it was not planned as a high-density area. Become high-density. It was originally planned as a high-density area. It doesn't matter if the density is doubled. For example, the government originally approved the 10th floor. This time we can grant 20 layers. The original project totaled 200 sets. Now 400 units can be built. This is not over yet. The center of every metro station. Near high-density circles. Within 1.2 kilometers. Medium-density 3 to 4-story apartment buildings will be planned and built. To make more effective use of planning. If you can't imagine what it's like here, just look at Epping now and you will know. Until the deadline for this video, the NSW government has not officially announced which 7 metro stations will be replanned. But I checked the relevant pages of Shenzhou's official website. I think the following areas are very likely. Cherrybrook, Macquarie Park, Crow's Nest, Eveleigh, Parramatta Road, Camellia, Westmead. Of course these. It's all guesswork. Which are the 7 development zones? We have to wait for the state government to announce it. You may ask. 3. State governments mandate building approvals and prefabricated building plans. State government wants high-density development. What to do if the city council disagrees? It stands to reason that it is possible. But this time, in order to clear the way for the state government to got a trick. Decisions made directly at the state government level. Ignore the objections of the city government. If it really comes true, residents of these 7 metro development areas and people who want to buy a house here in the future. Maybe you should think about it carefully. Because of residents' opinions, high-density development can no longer be stopped. The state government will also pre-approval in advance. Design of some 3 to 4-story medium-density apartment buildings. Then the developer buys the design. After making some slight changes, you can start building. Greatly shortened the application approval cycle. What I'm worried about. In the future, these metro development zones. Within 1.2 kilometers of the surrounding area. 3 to 4-story apartment building. Do they all look the same? Then it's not over yet. State government-led development approvals. It will also include 15% government low-rent housing. That is to say, next 5 years. Not only will apartments begin to overflow. Low-rent housing is hidden among these apartments. You can't even hide. Melbourne's thinking is basically the same as Sydney's. It's just the Victorian government's fiscal deficit. More than NSW. Develop in urban areas. There is a greater tendency to reduce infrastructure costs for urban expansion. Trends in the next few years, guess. We talked so much. Everyone can calm down and think about it. The next 5 to 10 years. Sydney and Melbourne property markets. What changes may occur? If you could see. That means you have a certain vision for development. An investment vision. Let me tell you my own opinion. It may not come true. I don't want it to come true either. But I think it's very possible. The first is the proliferation of high-density apartments. Coming to Sydney and Melbourne. There are so many immigrant students. Coupled with the needs of local people. And Sydney and Melbourne house prices are so expensive. How can we solve the housing problem more cheaply? It seems that there is only one plan at the moment. In a place with convenient transportation and strong transport capacity near the city. For example, near a metro station. Carry out high-density apartment development. Apartment supply in the coming years. It is possible that there will be a surge in. I can't say whether the price of the apartment will go up. Sometimes in terms of absolute price. There will still be an increase. After all, the price of cabbage is rising these days. But one of the basic logics of Australian real estate investment. Scarcity will only get worse. You might say, I didn't buy the apartment just to increase the price. But to get cash flow. Rent is crazy now. Under the wave of large-scale apartment development. How long can it last? Even if it lasts. Sydney rental yields. 3% to 4% for long-term rental. Short-term rental 6% to 8%. Also pay interest on the loan. Then why don't you invest in a fund? What about buying high dividend stocks? Maybe the cash flow will be better. On the other hand, the supply of villas is on the decline. Because urban fringe expansion has slowed down. Housing construction volume in development zones. It might also slow down gradually. Of course, this depends on different locations and regions. Specific analysis cannot be generalized. If it is an old area, it's not a major transportation station. Maybe the state government will show its favor. Don't engage in large-scale development. What about the villas here? Will always be scarce. Especially villas suitable for family living areas. It will become a target of competition for rich people. What future can I think of? If the current trend continues. There will be obvious polarization. High density of poor. Rich man's big villa. Those who can only afford an apartment. Although I have a home. But this house can't bring wealth. It's really just a home. People who can afford a villa. Because of scarcity. The newly wealthy people in society rush to buy. Price rise. Not only a home. It has also become a tool for creating wealth. I'm often on various media and certain books. Saw an ad for an apartment for sale. The advertising slogan sounds outrageous. It's not like you can't buy an apartment. It's okay to live. Relatively cheap. But if you make money. You really think too much. If you see this. Please help me like, subscribe and forward to your good friends. This channel helps you succeed in real estate investment in Australia. See you in the next video.